Nightmare nerds, welcome to this week's episode of Nightmare Revisited, and this week we are talking about a super fun one, and if we are lucky, we might actually talk for more than 3 minutes about this movie, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I make no guarantees. Because, yeah, for sure, because last time was a little bit, we got a little bit sidetracked, just a wee bit, but, I think there's enough ridiculously interesting things to talk about in this title that should keep us on track. And that title is, of course, 13 Ghosts. It is a movie that when it came out, it was kind of universally panned. It did not do great at the box office. It did break its budget, but with marketing and publicity and stuff like that, it did not surpass what the studio put into it. And it was a bit of a downer for Dark Castle Entertainment, who, aside from this movie, has also made Ghost Ship, which is also an absolute ripper. And they did House on Haunted Hill as well, which is an absolute ripper. All remake, well, except for Ghost Ship, but remakes of William Castle movies, which is really interesting. So, but I've loved this. I loved this movie when I was little, and which is probably not a movie I should have seen when I was little, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think this is a great. It's developed a big cult following, mostly I think due to the really cool the production design, which is fantastic. Some really interesting and cool ghosts, and of course, the ever-growing mega cult of Matthew Lillard fandom, I think, also helps this movie a lot. So, Gillian, my guy.
Uh-huh.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Are you here to tell me, like, Mike, I fucking hate this movie?
No, I love 13 Ghosts. I do think it's dog shit, but I love it.
I think it might be the best movie ever made, and I have a good reason to believe that. Okay, anyway, so you know what? Let's attack that right now. I'm not going to tell you that this is a great piece of art.
No.
I'm going to tell you that this is maybe one of the most entertaining things you could possibly see, and there are some like unique nuggets of perfection just hidden inside this absolute dumpster fire of a movie, in my personal opinion.
Oh yeah, there's some great moments throughout the movie. There's a lot of really good stuff within the movie, but as a total package, it is, as you described it, a dumpster fire.
I'd be really interested in checking out your total package, if you know what I'm saying, buddy.
Hey,
wink. Anyway, so let's, in Nightmare Network fashion, do you remember the first time you saw this movie and how you felt about it?
Okay, I think I was in my teens.
Okay.
Probably 13, 14, something like that. My mother really enjoyed the movie, and so when I was like, I'm going to watch this movie, she was like, all right, well, if it scares you. And then I put it on, and it super fucking didn't. But I did think it was really fun. And I think, as most people that I've talked to about the movie sort of agree, I think the thing that stood out the most to me was the lore around the Black Zodiac.
Yes.
And how criminally underutilized that was throughout the movie.
So let me give you, this kind of ties into something I want to talk about, but so the first time I saw this movie came out in 2001 or 2, I believe, and I was 10 years old when it came out, literally. And I loved horror movies, and I really, 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 really wanted to see this movie after seeing the trailer. And I was like begging my dad or my brother or my sister to go take me to see this movie, and no one would. And that like broke my absolute heart that no one would take me to see this movie. And so it went through its theatrical run. I didn't see it. And then it came out. It came out on DVD. And I don't remember how specifically this happened. But this movie, I bought it somehow. Like, I had money from a birthday, and I went into a Sam Goody, and I bought this DVD with my mom. I don't know how all of the sudden I'm now allowed to watch this movie. The thresholds of allowances that I had as a youngster were quite baffling. But I took it home. I was so stoked to watch it. Immediately loved it. In a way that I think all children love movies, where they see things and they're like, ah, and it just hits their hearts. Like for example, like, this movie's not a great movie. Daredevil was at one point my favorite movie as a child, and my sister likes to hold that over my head. I was like 10 years old when it came out, and the Evanescence song was in it, and I was like, this movie is a masterpiece. But clearly that movie is also dog shit. But for like an hour and a half, it held my attention, which is maybe the hardest thing to do for like a 10-year-old. So I thought it was the greatest movie ever made. It's clearly awful, but I loved it all the same. But do you know what I loved most about watching this movie on DVD? I don't know if you have the DVD, or if you know what I'm talking about.
Are you about to tell me about how there is a whole documentary, like, featurette system about the Black Zodiac, which is definitively the coolest part about the DVD?
Dude, it's so cool. Like, I loved that. There's like this you go to the special features, and it's like there's each ghost has its own, that's part of the Black Zodiac, has its own little vignette featurette that explains how they got there, and like what happened to them, and how Criticos got them. And that was so cool and fascinating to me, and like arguably better than the entire movie was this one little section on the special features.
I don't know if you have to argue it. I think it is just better than the rest of the movie.
That's probably fair. The one that always stuck out to me was the Torn Prince. He was the baseball player that got killed. Yeah, so like you may or may not know this, dearest listeners, but I'm a bit of a huge baseball nerd, and so I remember like watching that as a kid, and the dude's name, who was the Torn Prince, was Royce Clayton, and there was a real baseball player who was not that good, but still I had his baseball card, named Royce Clayton. And so like in my mind, that little connection was something that like made these stories a little more real, and like
that's cool.
And like recognize it. Yeah, so like that was something that was really cool. But every story could have been like its own movie. Like there could have been like a spin-off series to watch these friggin' like I would have rather watched like Matthew Lillard and F. Murray Abraham like go on like a ghost hunting tour of all of these ghosts and seeing their backgrounds and like watching them get caught. Like that would have been sick. Like that would have been such an interesting thing to watch to me, and it would have been out of this world, like weird, and that even weirder than it already is.
Absolutely. Fun fact, it is actually a thing online where a bunch of people, I am one of them, are like, hey, Netflix, if you're looking for content,
yep,
seriously, just adapt those stories, do a 12-part Black Zodiac miniseries, and just like each episode is an hour, just like show us how the Black Zodiac came to be.
Yep.
We'll watch it. We'll super watch it.
Yeah, and I think one of the most fascinating things about this movie is how it came out like a full 20 years before the Hellraiser remake, which we've talked about is the same movie. So
yes.
Which is pretty impressive on 13 Ghosts' behalf. Really getting ahead of the curve on that Hellraiser remake.
Well, it's 13 Ghosts. It's also got, hints of Haunting of Hill House. House on Haunted Hill.
Yep.
And Hell House. And there's a bunch of like classic horror movies that the new Hellraiser 100% borrows from.
Yeah.
But then the big one being, it does feel, I don't know whether he watched the remake of 13 Ghosts and was like, and it was just written into his brain somewhere, or whether it's just sort of like there's only 12 stories.
Just there's only 12 stories, but if you collect them all together at once, it becomes the 13th story.
Yes.
Which is the 13th floor, also a movie. So, wow, we are really like cracking the Illuminati of Hollywood right now. This is insane. Wow, guys. Welcome to Nightmare Network.
Just on the audio podcast, put the overlay of like the math flying.
Yeah, just or like our heads over Charlie Day in the yeah. So
coincidence? I think not.
I think not. So so this so nothing about this movie scared you, because like I was pretty terrified of this movie. I think I was probably a little younger than you were when I saw it, but the one thing that I remember specifically scared the poopy out of me was the jackal ghost. Like that thing with the cage around its head, and that thing scared the shit out of me, even though it is aggressively used to exploit the one shot of some not dead boobs we have in the whole movie. But that ghost like terrifies me.
I don't think the jackal ever scared me. I'm trying to think I think the one that was the freakiest to me was the torso.
Yeah.
It was the torso, and I have a personal fear of like burn victims. I don't know why. They just like, it's tragic that happens to anybody, but if I see an image of a burn victim, it immediately goes straight to the fear center of my body. So the withered lover was like weirdly like, I was like, nah, I don't like it. But everything else was so stylized.
Yeah.
Or most everything else was so stylized in how ghostly and how they appeared that I was just like, oh, that's an effect.
So it's funny that you bring up the withered lover, because I was also kind of creeped out by that. Not because of necessarily because of the burn victim part of it, but because which is like creepy in it of itself because of the effect that they use. But I don't want to give this movie like enough, like, what's the word, like enough
credit.
I guess credit's the word, to like be like, wow, they tapped into something that like I didn't realize was there emotionally. But like, it was always so weird to see the mom as a ghost, because I was wondering if if that glass wasn't there, because Arthur first sees the ghost of his wife when he's stuck behind a panel, right?
Yes.
And so like that's his little safe zone that Matthew Lillard makes for him. And they're not able to touch, right? And so they like kind of like put their hands against the glass together. And every time I see this movie, including this time, I don't know how fresh you are on your rewatch of this, but I watched it like 2 days ago.
I watched it, I think, less than a year ago.
So every time I see that scene or think about it, it really creeps me out, because I always wondered, if that glass wasn't there, would she have killed him? Like, the whole thing with these spirits is how they're all malevolent, right? And that like they all died in some like horrific way, and that wasn't necessarily like what their lives weren't necessarily what made them like aggressive ghosts. It was their deaths, right? And so like if we look at the special features, there's the bound woman who was, you know, like born with a silver spoon in her mouth and like to play around with dudes' hearts and everything, but like wasn't a murderer or anything. And then she herself was aggressively murdered, and that turned her into this malevolent spirit. Or the kid with the arrow through his head, who he just got shot in the head because he was a bully said like was making fun of him for dressing like a Native American, and so he got an arrow to the head. Like that's the background stories that we get. So like that idea, which was totally planned by the director, obviously, in this masterpiece of human emotion. Like, it always, I was a question, like, would she have hurt him if that glass wasn't there? Like, like, I guess, like, identifying, like, not wanting to see our, like, loved ones die, but also, like, being afraid of what they might turn into after the fact. Like, something about that really kind of put a seed in my brain, I guess, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. Quick question. Are they all malevolent? I thought they were just all tortured spirits.
So, it's a great question.
Because not all of them are inherently malevolent, but they are all visibly tortured.
So, I believe there is some lore where, oh God, I wish I could remember off the top of my head. But watching it this time, I did ask myself that question, because I was like, I've always thought that question. So this time I was like, all right, well, let me watch it and try to figure out if they say something to indicate that. And I'm pretty sure whether it's in the background feature, like in the special features, or it's something that that Rafkin or Cyrus says, is that all of the ghosts want to hurt you. And I think it's in the scene where he's talking to Rod Digga, where she doesn't believe in ghosts, and she's like, most ghosts can't hurt you. Most of them don't even want to hurt you, but when they die in like certain scenarios or something, it makes them aggressive towards people or something like that. So I think something was said that made me believe that because of the circumstances of their deaths, they were aggressive towards humans. But I could be making that up.
I don't, like, I'm not entirely sure. I always got the impression that it wasn't that they were all malevolent. I think most of them are malevolent, but I think that they are all universally tortured spirits.
Sure.
And that, I don't know if the withered lover is malevolent, at least toward her family,
sure.
Because in the background of several scenes, you hear her talking to the kids.
Yes, yes, that does happen.
Warning them of danger, and being like, "Don't go down there,"
sure.
or run away. And it's like, even before they have the glasses on, when everything starts to release, you can hear her in the back of some of the scenes trying to warn them that there's something dangerous coming.
Yeah.
Which, to me, implies that she's not malevolent in totality, that she is at least looking out for her family. However, there is something there's something in me that goes, it would be incredibly haunting and awful if she was using that as a way to lure them into something awful.
Sure.
But,
you know what I think's happening here?
Uh-huh.
Remember last week when
we're writing a better movie?
Yeah, we were writing a better movie than The Pope's Exorcist was. I think that's what's happening right now. Is like we're projecting what we want this movie to do, like with its characters and circumstances, to make something like different but also super interesting. But I'm not going to hold it against this movie because I have so much fun watching it. So
it's a ride from beginning to end.
Yeah, it sure is.
Before we move on to anything else, and you might have been about to bring this up, the biggest detractor from this movie is the editor, who under no circumstances should be allowed to edit anything ever again.
No, he did a fine job. It's funny you mentioned that.
If you are currently on cocaine.
Dude, it's funny because it's like the editor and the cinematographer got together and were like, let's make sure that absolutely no one has any idea where the other person is spatially in this movie. There's a whole bunch of scenes where they're like in the hallway and they're going in going in one direction and then they're going in the other, and then there's the one scene where like Matthew Lillard and Rod Digga get like separated, and she by a closing glass door, and she throws him the glasses, and I'm literally like, I have no idea where the hell they are right now, or who is looking at what, or like what direction they're supposed to be separated in. It is so disorienting.
The movie is, like, the house in the movie is so disorienting, and I know, like, I feel that they were trying to
Some
be
of it's
like,
part of that, for sure.
that it's, like, labyrinthian and this whole thing. The folly that they suffer on this is that it is a glass house, and so it is see-through.
Right.
And they establish at the beginning that you can, from the front yard, see almost all the way through the house.
Right.
And so the fact that we can't see anybody else ever through the glass and the walls and just go, oh, this is sort of where they're at, is hilarious to me, because I'm like, where are you and what is happening?
It's funny you bring that up as well, because so last week when we tried really hard to talk about The Faculty, we also talked about Hunter x Hunter and how you really disliked it because there was like a bit of a logic problem going on with the writing. And like, I was trying so hard to be like, no, Hunter x Hunter, I love you. I still love 13 Ghosts, but like watching this movie, the most painful part, aside from like having no idea where anything is spatially oriented in that house after a certain point, is like how can they afford a nanny? We know that they don't have any money. Like everything I know about this family is that they have no money. Yeah. Like there's so many little inconsistencies about that. The mom has a professional Hollywood-esque like headshot that they're using for like, this is how we remember our mom, and it's not like a nice picture of the family. It's like she's draped over some sort of like, I'm like, that's literally out of her, like,
that's her headshot.
That's her headshot that they took from her fucking casting. Like, that is what that is. And so there are like, so things like that were super like bothersome watching it, even though I forgave all of it because I was having such a great time. But I have a theory about that there is a deeper meaning to this movie, and I would like you to indulge me for a moment, if you would.
Go right for it.
13 Ghosts is actually a cautionary tale about not having property insurance.
Elaborate.
I would love nothing else to elaborate. We're introduced to Arthur Criticos and his family, and in one sweeping shot of them staring out the backyard, and then like a 360-degree pan to a different apartment, that's pretty cool to watch, but also very confusing because you're like, are the kids burning alive? But they're also, I just saw them outside. Like what? Like what's are they trying to get the kids already outside? That whole scene is just really weird. But the first, and then it cuts into all of these like bills paid, that like, or past due bills and stuff. And I'm over here like, did you not have any insurance on your house? Clearly they didn't, because if they had insurance on their house and this was a fire, they would have some sort of payout to get them back on their feet. Not only did they lose their house in a fire, they lost his wife and their mother in a fire. She didn't have health insurance or life insurance, clearly, because they would have got a payout for that. These are uninsured people being reckless with their property and their loved ones, but it is a story of redemption, my friend, because when they get this house from Uncle Cyrus and they go inside this house, and the little kid, the first podcaster ever, who's talking into his little tape recorder, he's doing circles around the house in his scooter. The first thing that Arthur says to him is, stop doing that, at least until we get some property insurance. That is the first sentence he says to his kid in that house, which tells me that he is a changed man, and that they abso-fucking-lutely did not have life or house insurance in their past house, and therefore can only blame themselves for the predicament that they are in. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Taking that angle from it, it seems more to me like that's a deeply millennial story.
They weren't thinking about this back in the day.
Well, like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's the sort of thing, it's like, yeah, we had a small house, it's all we could afford, like, we literally didn't even have money for property insurance. And, like, you know, maybe the wife, like, had left her previous job and was about to start a new one, but because she was in between jobs, like
the circumstances,
life insurance, then like so the life insurance goes, well, we're just not going to pay out, and it's just like
it's like, and she denied COBRA benefits, so her benefits didn't go from one job to the next because we figured the transition would be seamless, right? Man, this movie is a step away from millennial social satire, and like I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Good Lord.
So, but anyway, so they ended up they did end up learning their lesson about insurance, which I think is really important. And here's my other criticism.
And all it
you
first. All it cost was Matthew Lillard's life.
All it cost was Matthew Lillard's life. Okay, so big point that I have in my notes. Man, we ask and have asked so much from Matthew Lillard throughout his entire career.
Yep.
Like this dude is really what's pushing this movie forward in terms like the first shot is of this weird kind of junkyard graveyard, and then Matthew Lillard comes out and you're just like, I'll watch anything that you do, sir. And even with this most absurd and like so illogical and out of this world subject matter and material, that dude gives 110 fucking %. He is a joy to watch in this movie.
He is and this might be a hot take. I don't think it is, though. He is the best part of the movie.
Yeah, he really is. He
is the reason you stick around and watch this film, or this movie. It's so, like, his performance is so fun. He's just given it and carrying this movie on his back. And Tony Shalhoub, God love him, is sleeping through the script of this movie.
Yeah, he sure is. Like, okay, this is quintessential Matthew Lillard.
So is F. Murray Abraham, but like, I get it.
For sure. And Beth Davids, though, really selling it too. Miss Honey is killing it in this movie. But anyway, let's and also, you know, killing it in the I got a crush on you department too. I don't know what the nice way to say that is, but that's what I went with. Anyway.
You think she's a cutie?
I had a thing for Miss Honey, and then she started throwing Quicksilver flares at ghosts, which work for some reason. So I was about it.
No, that tracks.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, the like quintessential Matthew Lillard, and what, like, I don't know if he chose this. I'm hoping that he did, because something about it is absolutely perfect. So they get to the house, right? And then they find him disguised as a power dude outside, right? That's like, I need to get in to check the breakers.
Yep.
He still has attitude as an undercover powered guy, right? And like, I think that's a beautiful thing in itself. But the best part about it is that when he takes off his jumpsuit, under his orange jumpsuit is another suit.
Yes.
Like, he is wearing this kitschy little suit under his already suit. And, like, something about that is fucking perfect to me.
Yeah, he's wearing a full blazer underneath his, like, jumpsuit.
Yes.
Which is wild to me.
Oh, God, it's so good. He took... I never noticed it, and he took that off, and, like, pure joy shone in my eyes when we were just like, oh, my God. Like, think about Matthew Lillard for a second. The superior villain in Scream, I would argue.
Yeah, that's, you don't have to
don't have to
argue that with me. I agree fully.
And I do appreciate that the newer Scream movies are also trying to tease, like, we don't know if Stu actually died, right? And so, I mean, yeah. I mean, the Casey argument is one thing, right? Like, that's awful, but like, have you seen that online where people like Drew Barrymore was like, I mean, I think Casey Becker might have survived that first attack in Scream. Like, you never know. Like, if the writing's good, anything's possible.
Her intestines were out.
Yeah, literally, all of Twitter was like, there has never been a character more dead in any movie than Casey Becker from Scream 1.
There has never been a character more dead in any movie than Casey Becker.
Yes, dude, Twitter went off, and it was so good. But, like...
Well, have you seen the new Scream?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
I mean, Kirby confirmed that Stu Ermacher is dead.
Right.
Which I hate that.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Like, I do really enjoy the idea of him off somewhere doing something nefarious still, because, you know, all he got was a TV to the face. Come on. Well, he's fine.
Oh, I mean, scientifically, he would have survived that. He probably just would have gone into a coma.
Sure, which, like, big whoop, you know?
Yeah.
So like, superior villain in Scream, carrying 13 ghosts on his back.
Yep.
Carrying 2 Scooby-Doo movies as far as they could possibly go.
Yep. Well, okay, the carrying is being done by him and by...
A CGI dog.
No. I always remember her name, but I just forgot. The woman who plays Velma. Linda Cardellini.
Linda Cardellini. I love Linda Cardellini.
Yes, Linda Cardellini is also helping to carry those movies.
So I had a quick thought right here, because I remembered that Seth Green was in that second movie, right?
Yes.
And I would say overall I like Seth Green. Like, I can appreciate what he does with, like, Robot Chicken and stuff. But for a moment, I wanted to say, like, just a split second, I wanted to say Elijah Wood, not Seth Green. And, I just, whatever reason, wanted to flip them into my head and say that Elijah Wood was in the second Scooby-Doo, but he wasn't. Which goes to my point that we talked about last week, that, man, you really want to start putting Elijah Wood in stuff, because I think, like, I don't see Seth Green anymore, but every time I see Elijah Wood in something, like Yellow Jackets, I get really excited.
Yep.
So let's put him in some Scooby-Doo movies and see how that goes.
Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
What's the scariest scene in this movie for you? Because I know what scene got me, like, the only scene in the movie where I was, like, thinking back on it, I was like, oh, that's actually really creepy.
I think I have 2 answers. One doesn't scare me. I think it's just the best scene in this movie. But I do remember when I was little, I think the scariest scene in the movie was the bathtub scene.
That's exactly the scene I was going to say.
Oh, really? Okay, good. That's cool. You go first. Tell me why.
In general, I like a bunch of people have that thing where sometimes you're in the shower and you go to wash your hair, and you're like, this is it. This is where I die.
Yep.
So there's that, but there's also there's something so great about the transition from being a normal bathroom to passing through the glasses, and now we see what is actually in this restroom, and how, like, it is covered in blood, and, like, the ghost is in there, and it's like, that was so cool, because it's like, this is what you see, this is what you don't see.
Which is one of the strengths of this movie, I think. Like one thing that it does really well is that whole glasses mechanism, right? Where we're seeing things through that we're not seeing things without, right? Like, that's something it does really well.
Yeah, well, it does the whole, like, this allows you to see, like, the wavelength that they're on or whatever.
Yep.
And it sort of posits that idea of, like, this could be happening around you right now, and you have no idea because you can't see it. And I don't know, there's so much about that one particular scene that I'm like, this is actually, I think, some of the best use of horror in this movie.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it's with one of the silliest ghosts.
Yeah, for sure. There is something unsettling about that ghost, even though she is a little silly. And I think that also probably comes from the fact that I saw it when I was 10, right? And so, like those were, like, maybe some of the first movies that I, like, really, really saw, right? And then, like, so it's like there's this one part of your like child boy psyche that's like, whoa, and then the other part that's like, it's not supposed to look like that. Like, that's a little disturbing. So there's like a bit of a fractured, like, oh no, kind of a feeling when you look at that as a kid.
My favorite reaction I've ever heard somebody have to seeing that particular ghost, one of my old roommates, Yolanda.
Oh, Yolanda!
Yeah. We're watching the movie, and that scene happens, and she just goes, whose teenage male cousin got to pick this actress?
That's so good. So the other thing that scares me about this scene is, I may have mentioned this to you before. If not, you're about to learn something about me. I love baths. Like, baths are the bathtub is one of my happy and safe places. Like, nothing makes me happier than, like, getting in a nice warm bath when it's cold outside and reading a book with some bubbles in my tub. Mm-hmm. It's one of my favorite things, and it always has been. When I was little, when I was growing up, I used to love taking baths with my plastic dinosaurs, and I would like play in the tub with my plastic dinosaurs. Like that's like a key memory of growing up.
Okay.
And so like you're like, all right, I'm gonna log that away for information that I know about Mike.
That legitimately, I was like, that goes right into the banks.
Yeah, right into the banks. We're gonna keep that one. So like, even when I was little, like, things that invaded my safe space, like any movie that like horrified a tub, because that's where I was when I like felt safe and felt happy and relaxed. I would be like, that's a hard no from me, sir. You are invading my safe space. And so seeing also this really weird, horrific representation of like adolescent me and looking at strange boobs and like in the bathtub, which is now filled with blood, which is all of my safe space, it created this swirling, like psychological, horrifying effect on me that has lasted throughout my entire life, I'm pretty sure.
So, question.
Sure.
Does that mean that like two of the scariest scenes in cinema for you are the scene in Nightmare on Elm Street where Nancy falls asleep in the tub, and then also the old woman scene from The Shining, which is objectively horrifying regardless?
It is objectively horrifying, and yes, listen, horror filmmakers, I love you so dearly, but from the bottom of my heart, stop shooting stuff in bathtubs, just for me.
Hey Mike.
Yeah.
You've virtually just guaranteed that something within the next couple of projects that I do will take place in a bathtub.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because literally I shot a short film with Jenny from Digging, where she literally takes a in a bathtub of blood, and I'm literally like, I'm breaking my own rules here, man. I'm a hypocrite.
There you go.
Damn it.
Haha.
All right, so there's something in this movie that I feel a very strong need to talk about.
Go ahead.
I need to tell you a little story first.
Okay.
So I went to film school. I know. Woo. And we took a class on like film genres comedy, which is pretty general and whatever.
Yeah.
But we watched Duck Soup, right?
Okay.
And so there's the scene, the mirror scene in Duck Soup, right? Where
yes.
where they're like, if you don't know it, please go watch Duck Soup. But essentially, Groucho Marx and the other Marx, I don't remember which Marx it is, he like walks past a door frame, and there's another Marx that is dressed similarly to him, and he somehow, through movie magic, convinces himself that it is a mirror. And so the person on the other side of the doorway is mirroring his actions to make him think that it's a mirror, so that he doesn't know that someone's in his house, right? And so there's a scene, they're doing stuff, and there's a part where Groucho Marx does a 360-degree flip, right? And the person on the other end of the quote-unquote mirror/doorway doesn't do a 360-degree flip. He just like shrugs in the direction that he flips and then goes, "Da," like to match him when he comes back, but he doesn't flip. Because the beauty, obviously, me ruining this joke, explaining it to you, is that he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Right? So My film professor, who I loved so much, and he will probably never listen to this podcast, but Ethan, you're great. He like with joy in his eyes while we were talking about this movie, that was like, you could teach entire classes on just that scene. It's just genius cinema, and like you could teach entire classes on that, whether it's just for comedy or for cinema or whatever. Like you could teach classes on that. And I'm here to tell you that if that's the case,
Okay.
you could give entire degrees on Rod Digga's joke, "Did the lawyer split?" It is the height of humor in cinema. This is one of the greatest jokes ever created. I'm sorry. It is, and I will die on this hill. It is, like, when I heard it this time, joy lit up in my eyes. So, context. There's a lawyer character who's an asshole, and a door during lockdown literally closes and cuts him in half.
Yep.
And he slips apart. And then later on, when they can't find him, as almost a throwaway joke before a jump cut to another scene, Rod Digga goes, "Did the lawyer split?" And in that moment, pure adrenaline and maybe the face of God showed itself to my face, because nothing will ever top that joke. Like, I don't understand why people keep making movies knowing that the pinnacle of art happened in that one line of dialogue. Like, we should just continuously show this movie in theaters instead of making new ones. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. He gets it.
It's not that I disagree with you.
Because who could, right?
Sure. It is that I find myself in a rough predicament, given that literally in the last episode, I pointed out like an incredible joke in The Faculty, just a full humdinger if you get the punch.
Right.
And you went, huh, yeah. It's
the lawyer split. I'm sorry.
You are fully incorrect. But in this one, you just went on a several minute, like, it is the greatest joke ever in cinema. Did the lawyer split?
Okay, you know what?
Visual pun.
It was a visual pun. It was amazing. Dude, it was so good. Oh my God.
Listeners, he's crying.
Context. I watched this 2 nights ago after working 23 straight days. I was in the right mood to lose it a little bit.
You deserve the hearty guffaw, like you do. You do. But also, I do really like Did the Lawyer Split. It is
so
such
good.
A groaner.
Yeah.
Like, you hear it and you're just like, ah.
I didn't write it down, but Matthew Lillard had a great line too. Shit.
No, it's Matthew Lillard.
It's Matthew Lillard. He has all the best.
He has the best death in the movie. Spoilers.
Yeah, he does. It's funny though. Like, I was watching it this time, and like the dummy they used to crack in half over that thing does not because he dies when they like pick him up and they snap him in half against the like a corner of the wall. Doesn't even remotely look like a real human.
No.
Let alone Matthew Lillard. Like, this thing looks like they like you can like see half of its face. It looks like they dressed up a CPR dummy and just snapped him. Like, it's so awfully amazing.
Yeah, it's such a dog shit dummy. It's like, this like has the general proportions of a human, so this should work. And it's like,
we can use it. It's fine.
Don't look at it.
Yeah, don't look. That being said, so I do, we're getting to the end. I do want to wrap it up a little bit, but like, even though this movie is, like you said, we say it's not a great movie, but it is a great movie. It's
not the way that I would say is it's not, this movie, is it good? No. But this movie is incredible.
Yes, absolutely. I can get behind that. But, like, in terms of, like, actually movie talking, though, I can fuck with the end of this movie. I think the end of this movie is pretty good. Like, I like the even though it's pretty telegraphed, but the twisty twist of, like, the uncle still being alive.
Yeah.
And that, they put these kids on, like, that, like, I think visually that's, like, a cool visual to end it on, where you have the ghost, like, spinning around that, the eye of the hell, right?
Yeah, doing the electric slide.
Doing the electric slide. I think, and you don't see them until he puts on the glasses, which we've established is something that this movie does really well in terms of the visual information that you're given. I think it ends pretty strong. Like, I enjoy the ending of this movie. I think it's pretty legit.
I do really like the ending. There's one, like, such a nitpicky gripe that I have. There's one particular shot near the end of the movie.
You're gonna nitpick 13 Ghosts? Are you fucking kidding me?
Goddamn right I am.
What have we been doing this entire time?
Talking about, did the lawyer split?
Did the lawyers? Oh my god! You can't even say it. I'll just go back into hysterics. Right.
There's a shot from the ground up when all the ghosts sort of, like, come over and they tower over.
Yep.
And there's just a really sloppy use of composition in that shot. There's a whole section of the shot that is blank. There's nobody there.
Yeah.
And in the rest of the shot, there's, like, a couple of places where it's like you can't see some of the ghosts because there's others kind of in front of them. I'm like, hey guys, like, the DP should have been like, hey, like, I've got so much space over here on this side of the frame. Can you just sort of come in, just step aside, make a full ring,
right?
Because that'll look really cool because he's literally surrounded.
Well, a smear on an otherwise perfect film.
Yeah.
Wow, they almost made it.
Borderline flawless.
They almost got Killian's seal of approval. But that one shot, man, that sucks. Like, Roger Ebert, the great film critic, he gave his honor of the greatest movies of all time. He put them in his categories of great movies, right? Yeah. They surpassed the 4 stars and went into great movies. Mm-hmm. 13 Ghosts went all the way up to that 4-star threshold and above, but couldn't break through
because of that one shot.
The lock ceiling because of that one shot.
Yep.
It's a shame.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them.
Yeah. Well, I hate to end on a downer, but I guess that's what we're doing. You know what? I'm going to end with one point that I would like to make that I didn't bring up before. So, the Juggernaut, who is the first ghost that they capture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, he kills a ton of people, right?
Yeah,
and even Dennis, we learned through him that he killed 9 people when he was alive and 31 when he was dead, right?
Yep. They made him... in death, he was even more powerful than they could imagine.
Right. I'm not going to lie. I don't see a problem with that ghost being locked up and kept in a basement. Like, these spiritual right group people, like, they can leave most of these ghosts alone. Like, you're just gonna let him stay out here and kill people? Like, that's like, but you're like, no, we need to set his spirit free. Which at the end of the movie, when all of their spirits set free, and there's that, like, nice little shot of them, like, walking back into the woods and, like, slowly fading, they're just gonna go kill more people. Is that really a happy ending?
Yeah, it is a little bit of the containment field in Ghostbusters being released, where it's like, it's like, yeah, he was doing what he was doing for really bad reasons.
Yep.
However, it had a net positive in that these horrible ghosts, most of them murderous, all of them scary,
right?
Were kept in sort of an impenetrable prison, and they could just be there rather than out murdering people. But as it turns out, no, No, now they're free.
Now they're free to come out and terrorize you folks. Thanks for joining us today on Nightmare Network. Please don't get killed by ghosts that were set free by a ghost activist right groups.
Yep.
Da-ding.
Remember, confirm your kill.
Confirm your fucking kill. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to Season 3 of Nightmare Network. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and keep an eye on all of our socials for special announcements and videos. Remember, here at Nightmare Network, you share your scares.